I closed the joint account at 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, standing at the bank counter with my phone in one hand and 6 months of transaction records in the other. The teller, a woman named Patricia with kind eyes, looked up from her screen. Mrs. Reeves, are you certain? This will freeze all activity immediately. Completely certain, I said, my voice steady. I need the balance transferred to a new individual account in my name only, and I want all cards associated with this account deactivated within the hour. She nodded slowly, fingers moving across her keyboard. I didn't tremble. I didn't cry. I simply watched as she processed the request that would finally, definitively, cut off the financial lifeline my husband Daniel had been using to fund his affair with his secretary, Vanessa. The memories of my first life felt like watching a movie, where I'd been the fool, enduring, explaining, hoping. In that life, I discovered the affair 6 months later than I did this time. I'd found hotel receipts, jewellery purchases, weekend getaways, all paid for with our joint account. The account I'd fed with my salary from the marketing firm where I was senior director. The account Daniel barely contributed to anymore since his business had been struggling. In my first life, I'd confronted him, cried, begged for explanations. He'd promised it was over, that Vanessa meant nothing, that he'd made a terrible mistake. I'd believed him, I'd stayed, and I'd spent another 3 years watching our account drain while he became more skilled at hiding his transactions, more creative with his lies. By the time I finally filed for divorce, our savings were gone, my credit was ruined, and I'd wasted years of my life trying to resurrect a marriage that had died long before I'd admitted it. Then I'd died too, a car accident on a rainy November evening, leaving the office late after another exhausting day trying to rebuild my finances. The last thought I'd had was regret, not for losing Daniel, but for all the time I'd given him to destroy me. I woke up 6 months earlier, in my bed, with Daniel snoring beside me and the date on my phone showing March 15th, the day before the first suspicious transaction would appear. This time, I wouldn't wait. I wouldn't explain. I wouldn't give him the chance. All set, Mrs. Reeves, Patricia said, handing me a folder. Your new account is active. The balance of $847,000 has been transferred. The joint account is closed. $847,000. Money from my bonuses, my inheritance from my grandmother, my careful savings. In my first life, by the time I'd left, there had been less than $30,000 remaining. Thank you, Patricia. I walked out of the bank into brilliant sunshine. My phone buzzed before I reached my car. Daniel, why isn't my card working? I didn't reply. Instead, I drove to my office at Morrison & Blake Marketing, where my assistant, Jennifer, greeted me with coffee and a smile. You seem different today, she said. Good different. Just taking care of some long overdue housekeeping, I replied. My phone exploded with messages throughout the morning. Daniel, Eleanor, seriously, what's going on? My card was declined at the gas station. Daniel, this is embarrassing. Can you call the bank? Daniel, Eleanor, answer your phone. Daniel, what the hell did you do? I turned my phone face down and focused on the campaign presentation I was preparing for our biggest client, Vertex Technologies. In my first life, I had been so distracted by my crumbling marriage that I delivered a mediocre pitch and lost the account. This time, I had spent the past week crafting something exceptional. At lunch, I finally texted back. The joint account is closed. You'll need to use your own funds. My phone rang immediately. I declined the call. Daniel, what do you mean closed? You can't just close our account. I can and I did. We'll discuss this evening. I powered off my phone and spent the afternoon in meetings. At 5 p.m, I presented the Vertex campaign to their CEO, Raymond Torres, and their marketing director, Lisa Chen. Wait, I caught myself. Lisa Wong. Her name was Lisa Wong. The presentation was flawless. Every slide, every data point, every creative concept hit exactly right. Raymond leaned forward, nodding. Lisa smiled. "Elena, this is exactly what we've been looking for," Raymond said. "You've captured our vision perfectly while pushing us into territory we hadn't even considered. We're in." The contract was worth $2.3 million over 2 years. My commission would be substantial. In my first life, I had never gotten this account. I arrived home at 7 p.m. to find Daniel pacing in the living room. He'd always been handsome, dark hair, strong jaw, the kind of smile that had made me fall in love at 25. Now I just saw the weakness around his mouth, the calculated charm in his eyes. "What the hell, Eleanor?" he started before I'd even set down my bag. "You closed our account without discussing it with me? Do you have any idea how humiliating it was to have my card declined?" I hung my coat carefully, set my briefcase down, and turned to face him with complete calm. "I closed the account because I'm aware of your affair with Vanessa." His face went white, then red. "What? Eleanor, there's no—" "Daniel." My voice cut through his stammering. "I have 6 months of evidence. Hotels, jewelry, restaurants, weekend trips to wine country you told me were client meetings, all on our joint account, all paid for largely with my money." He opened his mouth, closed it. The calculations were happening behind his eyes. Deny, admit, minimize. "It's not what you think," he finally said, switching to wounded innocence. "Vanessa and I are just friends. Those expenses were legitimate business. I'm filing for divorce," I said. "I've already consulted an attorney. Given that we have records proving you spent marital funds on an affair, and given that my income has been the primary source of our joint finances for the past 3 years while your business has generated minimal revenue, my lawyer is confident about the outcome." "Elena, please, just let me explain." "I don't want explanations. I want you to move out." "This is my house too." "Actually, it's my house. My name is on the deed. My inheritance paid for the down payment. I've been covering the mortgage for 2 years. This was something I'd verified in my first life after it was almost too late. This time, I'd checked immediately. "You have until this weekend to remove your belongings. After that, I'll have them packed and placed into storage at your expense." His face twisted with anger now, the mask finally dropping. "You can't do this. You're my wife. You can't just kick me out over some misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding. It's a choice. You chose to betray me. I'm choosing to protect myself." I picked up my bag. "I'm going to the guest room. I suggest you start packing." "Eleanor." His voice followed me up the stairs. "You're being irrational. Let's talk about this like adults." I locked the guest room door and finally let myself breathe deeply. My hands shook slightly now that I was alone. But these weren't the tremors of heartbreak from my first life. They were the aftershocks of adrenaline, of finally taking action instead of absorbing blow after blow. Over the next 3 days, Daniel alternated between rage, manipulation, and attempts at reconciliation. He tried accessing our old account repeatedly, not understanding it was permanently closed. He called me cold, crazy, vindictive. He begged, explaining that Vanessa was lonely and he'd just been comforting her. He threatened, saying he'd fight me for everything. I stayed calm through it all. I'd already lived through his greatest hits in my first life. This time, I knew the script. On Friday, I came home to find him gone. He'd taken his clothes, his golf clubs, his collection of expensive watches I'd bought him for various anniversaries. He'd left the furniture, the kitchen items, the art we'd chosen together. He'd also left a note. "You'll regret this. You're throwing away 8 years over nothing." I threw the note away and ordered takeout. The divorce proceedings began the following week. My attorney, Margaret Rothstein, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd handled my case terribly in my first life because I'd been too emotionally destroyed to give her proper information, was thrilled this time with how organised I was. You have everything documented, she said, reviewing my files. Bank statements, credit card records, screenshots of his social media check-ins that contradict his stated locations. Eleanor, this is going to be straightforward. Daniel's attorney tried to argue for 50-50 asset division. Margaret laughed. Your client spent marital funds on an extramarital affair. My client can prove it. We're prepared to go to court. They settled. Daniel received $50,000 and his car. I kept the house, my retirement accounts, and everything else. The entire process took 4 months instead of the 2 agonizing years of my first life. During those months, I thrived. The Vertex campaign launched to spectacular results. Their sales increased 40% in the first quarter. Raymond Torres called me personally to thank me and immediately signed on for additional projects. My reputation grew. Other clients specifically requested me. By June, I was promoted to Vice President of Client Strategy with a salary increase of $75,000. My boss, Richard Morrison, shook my hand. You've been on fire lately, Elena. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Just focusing on what matters. I said. In my first life, I'd stagnated in my career for years, too drained by my failing marriage to give my best at work. This time, freed from that burden, I was unstoppable. I also started therapy. Doctors. Nina Patel helped me process not just the betrayal, but the strange grief of living through events a second time, of knowing what people would do before they did it. It's like you have a protective armor now, Dr. Patel observed in one session. You've already survived the worst. Nothing surprises you. Exactly, I said. I wasted so much time in confusion and pain before. I won't make that mistake again. Through mutual friends, I heard the fallout of Daniel's new life. Vanessa, it turned out, had expected Daniel to have money. When she discovered he'd been living off his wife's income and was now broke, his struggling business was actually failing spectacularly, her interest cooled dramatically. Daniel had moved in with his brother temporarily. He tried to start a new business venture but couldn't secure funding. The expensive lifestyle he'd been living on my dime was unsustainable on his actual income. I heard all this from Jessica, a former mutual friend who'd taken my side in the divorce. Vanessa dumped him last month, Jessica told me over coffee in August. Apparently, she'd thought she was landing a wealthy businessman. When she realised he'd been essentially living as a kept man, she was furious. She actually blamed him for misleading her about his finances. I sipped my latte, feeling nothing but mild satisfaction. What about Daniel? Miserable. He's been calling old friends, trying to borrow money. His business officially folded. He had to sell his car. Jessica leaned forward. Eleanor, he asked about you, wanted to know if you were seeing anyone. I'm not interested in his interest. Good. You look amazing, by the way. Like you're glowing. I was glowing. I'd lost 15 pounds, not from stress, but from finally having energy to exercise. I'd cut my hair into a sleek bob. I'd started wearing bolder colours. I joined a book club and a hiking group. I was living the life I'd always wanted, but had been too exhausted to create. In September, 6 months after closing that joint account, I attended a marketing conference in San Francisco. During a networking reception, I met Thomas Brennan, the founder of a successful tech startup. He was intelligent, funny, and genuinely interested in my work. The Vertex campaign was brilliant, he said. I actually cited it in a presentation about effective brand messaging. We talked for 2 hours. He asked for my card. 3 days later, he called. Not emailed, called, and asked if I'd consider consulting for his company. We're rebranding our entire product line, Thomas explained. I need someone who thinks strategically, who can see the big picture. Your work speaks for itself. The consulting contract was worth $200,000 over 6 months, outside my regular job. Richard approved it as long as it didn't interfere with my Morrison and Blake responsibilities. It didn't. If anything, it energized me more. Thomas and I became friends first. Then, gradually, something more. He was divorced too, 3 years out, with his life rebuilt. He understood the value of starting fresh. "You're remarkable," he told me one evening over dinner in October. "I don't just mean professionally. You have this clarity about you, like you know exactly who you are and what you want." "I do," I said simply. "I learnt the hard way not to waste time on people who don't value me." We started dating in November, exactly the month I died in my first life. The irony wasn't lost on me. Instead of dying in a car accident while working late because my finances were destroyed, I was celebrating a year-end bonus and planning a weekend trip with a man who treated me like an equal partner. The divorce was finalised in December. I didn't attend the final hearing. Margaret handled it. I was at a year-end celebration for Morrison and Blake, accepting an award for bringing in the highest revenue of any executive that year. "Eleanor Reeves is the embodiment of dedication and excellence," Richard said in his speech. "This year, she's transformed not just her career, but our entire client relations approach. Please join me in congratulating our new Executive Vice President of Strategy." The applause was thunderous. I stood at the podium, looking at my colleagues, my team, my future. "Thank you," I said. This year taught me that we all have the power to close accounts that no longer serve us, financial or otherwise, and invest in ourselves instead. Here's to building something worthwhile. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. "Eleanor, it's Daniel. I heard about your promotion." "Congratulations. I've been thinking a lot lately about us, about the mistakes I made. I was wondering if we could meet for coffee." "I miss you." I stared at the message for a long moment. In my first life, I'd received a similar message years into our drawn-out divorce, and part of me had softened, had wondered if maybe, possibly, we could try again. That moment of weakness had cost me another 6 months before I finally, truly walked away. This time, my finger hovered over the delete button. Then I reconsidered and typed, "I'm not interested in revisiting the past. I wish you well in your future endeavours. Please don't contact me again." I blocked the number. Thomas picked me up an hour later for dinner. As we drove through the city, lights reflecting off rain-slicked streets, he reached over and squeezed my hand. "You seem thoughtful," he said. "Just closing one more account," I replied. He smiled, understanding without needing explanation. That was the difference. With Thomas, I didn't have to explain. I didn't have to convince. I could simply exist as myself, and it was enough. On Christmas Eve, I hosted dinner at my house. My house no longer marred by memories of a failed marriage, but redecorated and reclaimed. Jennifer and her husband came, along with Lisa Wong and Raymond Torres from Vertex, Margaret Rothstein and her partner, Dr. Patel, and her wife, and Thomas. We laughed, we ate, we celebrated not just the holiday, but the year of transformation. To Elena, Margaret raised her glass, who taught me that the best revenge is living extraordinarily well. "It's not revenge," I corrected gently. "It's just life. The one I should have been living all along." Later, as guests left and Thomas helped me clean up, my phone buzzed with a message from Jessica. "Saw Daniel today. He looked rough. Asked about you again." When I told him about your promotion and that you're dating Thomas Brennan, his face just fell. "Eleanor, I think he finally realises what he lost." I showed Thomas the message. "Should I feel bad?" I asked. "Do you?" I considered it honestly. "No, I feel relieved. In another life, I spent years being hurt by him, years trying to fix something that was already broken. This time, I chose differently. I chose me. And I'm incredibly grateful you did," Thomas said, pulling me close. "In January, a year. After I'd closed that joint account, I received an email from Vanessa. The subject line read, "I'm sorry, I almost deleted it." But curiosity won. "Eleanor, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. I've spent months thinking about what happened. I was wrong. I participated in something that hurt you deeply, and I didn't care because I was selfish and wanted what I wanted. Daniel told me so many lies about your marriage, about you. I believed them because I wanted to. When I found out the truth, that he'd been using your money, that you were the reason he had any lifestyle at all, I felt sick. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and that you deserved so much better than either of us gave you. I heard about your success. I'm genuinely happy for you." I closed the email without responding. Her apology, sincere or not, didn't change anything. I didn't need her sorry to move forward. I'd already moved forward. In February, Blake won a major industry award for the Vertex campaign, and I accepted it at a gala in New York. Daniel was there, working as a low-level account coordinator at a competing firm, apparently trying to restart his career from the bottom. I saw him across the ballroom. He looked older, tired. He saw me too, standing at the bar in a sapphire dress, Thomas at my side, surrounded by colleagues and clients who respected me. Our eyes met. He lifted his hand in a tentative wave. I nodded politely, acknowledging his existence but nothing more, and turned back to my conversation. That was the moment I knew I'd truly let go. He wasn't a villain in my story anymore. He wasn't anything. He was just a person who'd once been in my life and no longer was. Later that night, Thomas and I stood on the hotel balcony, looking out over the city. "You know what the strangest part is?" I said. "In a way, I'm grateful. If he hadn't betrayed me, I might have stayed comfortable, stayed small. I might never have pushed myself to be this version of me." "You give him too much credit," Thomas said. "He didn't make you successful. He just got out of your way." Maybe. Or maybe some people come into our lives to teach us what we won't tolerate, to show us we're stronger than we think. Heavy thoughts for a celebration night. I smiled. Not heavy, just reflective. I spent so long being angry I caught myself. Thomas knew about the divorce, the affair, the recovery. He didn't know about the rebirth, the second chance, the living life twice. In my healing process, I amended, I'm not angry anymore. I'm just grateful I didn't waste more time than I did. "To not wasting time," Thomas said, raising his champagne glass. "To closed accounts and new investments," I countered. We clinked glasses, and I looked out at the city below, bright, vast, full of possibility. In my first life, this was approximately when I would have died. Instead, I was alive, truly, vibrantly alive, in a way I'd never been before. The joint account I'd closed that Tuesday morning in March had been more than just financial. It had represented every investment I'd made in a partnership that drained rather than sustained me. Closing it had been the first step in a complete portfolio reallocation. From loss to growth, from pain to possibility, from enduring to thriving. 3 months later, in May, I received an invitation to speak at my alma mater's business school about career success and resilience. I accepted. Standing before 200 students, I told them about strategic decision-making, about protecting your assets, about knowing when to divest from failing ventures. The hardest closures are the personal ones, I said. When you realize a relationship, business or personal, is depleting rather than enriching you, the temptation is to hold on, to hope things will change, to keep investing in something that isn't giving returns. But sometimes the most profitable decision you can make is to close that account and redirect your resources towards something with actual potential for growth. Afterward, a young woman approached me. "My boyfriend keeps borrowing money from me," she said quietly. "Small amounts, but it's adding up. He says he'll pay me back when his business takes off, but it's been 2 years and nothing's changed. I feel stupid even talking about it." I looked at her, 23, maybe 24, with her whole life ahead of her, and saw my younger self. "You're not stupid," I said firmly. "You're kind and hopeful. But kindness doesn't mean letting someone drain you. Hope doesn't mean ignoring patterns. If he's taking from you without contributing, if you're depleted and he's still asking for more, you know what that means?" "I love him," she said, tears in her eyes. "I know, but love shouldn't cost you everything you've worked for. Love should be a joint account where both people deposit and both people benefit. If it's only withdrawals on his side, that's not partnership. That's exploitation." She nodded slowly. "What did you do when you realised?" "I closed the account," I said simply. "I protected what was mine. And I built something better." 6 months later, I received an email from her. She'd ended the relationship, graduated with honours, and accepted a position at a Fortune 100 company. "You were right," she wrote. "The moment I stopped letting him take from me, I had so much more energy for everything else. Thank you for showing me it was possible to choose myself." I showed Thomas the email. We were in my backyard. My thriving garden had become a weekend project for both of us, planting tomatoes. "You're collecting your own awards now, right?" he said, nodding at my phone. "Changing lives. Just sharing what I learned the hard way." That's the definition of wisdom, isn't it? Learning from pain and using it to prevent someone else's. That night, as we made dinner together in my kitchen, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Daniel's brother's company, where Daniel had been trying to get a job, had filed for bankruptcy. The article mentioned several employees, including Daniel Reeves, would be laid off. Thomas glanced at the screen. "Do you want to talk about it?" "There's nothing to talk about," I said, and I meant it. No satisfaction, no schadenfreude, no residual pain, just neutral acknowledgement that his life was unfolding as it would, completely separate from mine. "You really have moved on," Thomas observed. "A long time ago." I chopped vegetables, thinking about how to phrase the truth without revealing the impossible. "I learned that holding onto anger or hurt just keeps you tethered to the person who wounded you. The real freedom is in complete indifference." In August, 18 months after closing the joint account, Thomas and I moved in together. Not to my house, we bought a new one together, with both our names on the deed, with separate accounts and a joint account we both contributed to equally. "Equal partners," Thomas said as we signed the papers. "In all things," I agreed. The house was beautiful, modern, bright, filled with potential. As we unpacked, I came across a box of old photos from my marriage to Daniel. I stared at them for a moment, the wedding, the honeymoon, the anniversaries. That smiling woman in the pictures felt like a stranger. "Keeping those?" Thomas asked gently. I shook my head and dropped them in the recycling bin. No real point in keeping accounts of closed businesses. That fall, Morrison and Blake promoted me again. Chief Strategy Officer, the C-suite, the youngest woman in the firm's history to reach that level. My salary broke $400,000. The celebration dinner was at an exclusive restaurant downtown. Richard gave a speech about my contributions, my vision, my leadership. "Eleanor joined us 8 years ago as a mid-level account manager," he said, "but in the past 2 years, she's revolutionized how we approach client relationships, strategy, and growth. She's brought in over $12 million in new business. She's mentored junior staff who've gone on to become stars themselves, and she's done it all with grace, intelligence, and an unwavering commitment to excellence." As people applauded, I caught a glimpse of someone at the bar. Daniel. He must have heard about the dinner through industry contacts. He looked worse than he had in New York. Thinner, older, defeated. Our eyes met across the room. He raised his glass slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement or maybe concession. I nodded once and turned back to my table, to my celebration, to my life. After dinner, as Thomas and I walked to the car, Daniel approached. "Elena," he said. "Could I talk to you for a moment?" Thomas looked at me. I nodded that it was fine. "I'll be at the car. Thomas said, squeezing my hand. Daniel and I stood on the sidewalk, street lights casting long shadows. "Congratulations," he said. "On everything. The promotion, the house, Thomas. You've done really well." "Thank you." I wanted to apologize. Properly. He looked down at his feet. "I was a terrible husband. I took advantage of your success, your kindness, your dedication. I blamed you for things that were my fault. I lied, I cheated, I stole from you because that's what it was. Stealing. Using money you earned to fund an affair. I was selfish and cruel, and I destroyed the best thing I ever had." I waited. He seemed to expect something. Forgiveness, absolution, maybe even a second chance. "I appreciate the apology," I finally said. "I hope you've learned from the experience and that you treat people better in the future." "Is that it?" he asked, something desperate in his voice. "Eleanor, I've lost everything. My business, my money, Vanessa, you. I've spent 2 years realizing what an idiot I was. Don't you think, couldn't we at least be friends?" "No," I said, not unkindly but firmly. "Daniel, I don't wish you harm, but I also don't want you in my life in any capacity. What we had is over. It's been over for a long time. I've moved on, and you should too." "You've moved on," he repeated bitterly, "to a bigger house, a better job, a successful boyfriend. Meanwhile, I'm starting over from nothing." "You made choices," I said simply. "I made different choices. We're both living with the consequences." "You're really not going to give me another chance after 8 years together?" "Those 8 years taught me exactly why I won't," I said. "Goodbye, Daniel." I walked away, back to Thomas, back to my life. Behind me, I heard Daniel call my name once more, but I didn't turn around. "You okay?" Thomas asked as I got in the car. "Completely okay," I said, and it was true. 2 years after closing the joint account, March again, spring returning, I stood in my backyard at a celebration. Morrison and Blake had just announced a major partnership with Thomas's company, a deal I'd helped broker. The party was filled with colleagues, friends, clients who'd become friends, and Dr. Patel, who'd helped me process everything. "Do you ever think about the what-ifs?" Dr. Patel asked me as we stood by the garden. "What if you'd tried to work things out with Daniel? What if you'd given him another chance?" "I don't have to wonder," I said. "I know exactly what would have happened. More lies, more betrayal, more years wasted. Some people show you who they are clearly. The mistake is refusing to believe them." "You've built something remarkable," she observed. "Not just professionally, but personally. You're happy." "I am," I said, surprised by how simple the truth was. "I genuinely am." Thomas came over, putting his arm around my waist. "What are we discussing so seriously?" "How Eleanor closed one account and opened so many better ones," Dr. Patel said with a smile. "Best financial decision she ever made," Thomas agreed. As the party continued, I looked around at the life I'd built, the career I'd earned, the relationship I'd chosen carefully, the friendships I'd nurtured, the home I'd created. None of it had been handed to me. All of it had started with one decision on a Tuesday morning at a bank counter. In my first life, I'd learned painfully that loyalty to the wrong person destroys you. In this life, I'd learned that loyalty to yourself saves you. The joint account was closed. The balance had been transferred. And I was finally, fully investing in the only person who would always be there. Myself. That evening, after guests left, Thomas and I sat on the back porch with wine. "Happy?" he asked. "Extraordinarily," I said. "Any regrets?" I thought about Daniel, about Vanessa. It's about all the pain of my first life that had taught me how to live this one better. None, I said finally. Everything happened exactly as it should have. In the distance, I could hear music from a neighbour's party, laughter carried on the spring breeze. Thus, night was warm, the stars were bright, and my future stretched ahead, unlimited, unencumbered, entirely my own. I'd closed the account, I'd protected my assets, and I'd built an empire on the foundation of knowing my worth. That was the best investment I'd ever made.